hand on your heart, look up at the sky, smile, and say, hey, I'm alive. Thanks for being alive with me today. Hey, and welcome to Be Alive with Kate Manser. Today's episode is a life update. I haven't updated y'all since I started this podcast a few months ago, and that was even recorded before that. I want to update you because number one, I love reading and hearing other people's life updates. I'm nosy and I also like learning from other people's experiences. And last month was one of the craziest, most manifestations coming true months I have had in a very, very long time, if not my whole life. So I want to share what my intention was, how I fell down, how I got back up, and the crazy gifts that the universe has given me over the past month. But to get there, we're going to start this past summer just so I can update you because I promise you the story all connects. And there is drama. There are ups and downs. There is crazy brushes with celebrities. There is me almost dying. That is what you have in store for you in this story. So, going back to this summer, I didn't have any travel planned until late August. I wanted to go spend the summer in Marfa, which is one of my most favorite places in the absolute world. There's some places that we go in this existence of ours that just feel like home. And from the first time I went to Marfa, Texas, back in 2019, I just felt so at home there. And I love the whole West Texas region, but specifically Marfa for me is just so special. If you didn't know, for the past 3 years, I have been living in my RV, traveling around the country for the most part. I was going to go to Marfa and I was going to be in the RV, but I wanted like to spread out. I wanted an office space. I wanted somewhere to be additionally out of the RV. So I started looking for an office space. And I toured a few different locations and I found this one that as soon as I walked in, I was like, wow, this place is amazing. It was floor to ceiling white floor, wall, ceiling, super high ceilings with these really cool skylights. But my main priority for this summer was this podcast. I really wanted to start this podcast. I told the lady, I said, oh, this space is so amazing, but it's not going to work for me this summer because it's just like, it's too echoey. And then I thought about it for a few more days. I couldn't get this space out of my mind. And then it hit me. I was like, oh, this isn't just my office space. This is my meditation studio and boutique. I've always wanted to have a boutique, a meditation space, an art studio, and I've envisioned it as a big piece of property that I'm going to open that has large scale art sculptures and meditation temple. It has lodging, it has a big art studio, and that is like 100% my dream. That universe, listen up. I can't wait to see how you bring it to me. As I thought about this particular space, I was like, oh, this could be a practice round for all of those things. I configured the space to be in the front, a boutique, and in the back, a retreat and meditation sanctuary. I circled up these meditation cushions with an altar in the middle, with candles, and this really beautiful burlap art wall hanging that I made. And with the high ceilings and the skylights with the light streaming down, it was just this very beautiful, reverent space. And then on one side, I had also my art studio. I'd set up my easel with my paints and my canvases. And then I also had a desk in the space that functioned as the register for the boutique, as well as a space for me to work from. So this space became all of my dreams in one place. And it wasn't that big actually, but I configured it to have all of these spaces just like have their own zone. And so for 3 months this summer, I had a boutique. I had my retreat space where I hosted private retreats. I had my art studio and my office space. A key learning that I learned was that as much as I've always dreamed of having my own boutique, in practice, I way overinvested on the boutique side, just like sourcing the vintage stuff, putting up all the stuff, pricing it, buying displays. It just like the boutique was great, but my passion is not selling things. My passion is inspiring people and uplifting people. And so I should have spent less time on the boutique and more time on the retreats. But as it was, I hosted several small group and individual retreats that were just so beautiful. And it was so cool how it came about because, for example, the one-on-one retreats, the person would come in and we would do this really beautiful grounding ceremony and we would dive in and they would just do a download for me on everything that was bothering them that they wanted to get clarity on at that point in their life. And I would have my whiteboard out and I would just be writing, taking notes. Like I have this superpower of seeing things from a very high bird's eye visionary view. For people who are caught in the weeds and stuff, like call me because I can see things and how the dots are connected and I can ask questions to help you see things from this much more macro perspective that can be really useful when we're stuck or seeking clarity on something that we're sort of in the washing machine on. And I would do a custom closing ceremony where I would make a meditation. I was going to use the word channel, which it basically is a channel. It just like sort of comes through me, but I don't want to make it seem like I'm some type of oracle or something. Then it was so cool because I realized that with my art studio there, closing the retreat with art therapy was such an amazing palette cleanser. I would turn on the music and they would just like jam and go into that art flow while I was just over on my computer typing and catching up with work. And that was just this beautiful palette cleanser that after this really intense and beautiful experience, cathartic, healing that we did, then they would do this art and then we would hug and I would send them off the threshold out into the world. I just got the most amazing feedback. And I think you can see and hear like I light up when I'm talking about these retreats because I love doing them. And the transformation that I saw in people, this is 2.5 hours. Okay. What I just described, it is not, we're not in here for a super long time. This is like get in, go deep, see things, make a plan, experience catharsis and cleansing, and then have this custom meditation, then the art palette cleanser, and then go off into the world. The transformation that I would see in that period and that people would feel was absolutely bananas in the best way. People would come in just like gray and heavy and crying and just feeling so lost and so stuck in the weeds. And they would leave literally like feeling like Superwoman or Superman. It lights me up that I was able to foster that transformation. My key lesson was that the boutique was cool, and I do like having a boutique and selling my books and little vintage treasures and things, but that's just a side thing. For me, my passion is in uplifting and helping people. So towards the end of the summer, though, because this was just a sublease, it was just a pop-up shop, I needed to pivot and figure out what am I gonna focus on next. I knew that I wanted to really focus on doubling down on my speaking career. I've been doing a lot of professional speaking engagements for corporations and associations, but I definitely want to do more. I started researching speakers that I look up to because I have a keynote, but I wanted to make it even better. So I was looking at Jesse Itzler. And for those of you who don't know, Jesse Itzler is a successful entrepreneur. He's also married to Sarah Blakely, the founder of Spanx, super successful entrepreneur. In recent years, I guess, he has followed a similar path of what I am doing in terms of being a personal growth professional. I call myself an inspirer. For those of you who want to know my official title, I call myself an inspirer. Everything that I do under that heading, whether it be writing my books, whether it be this podcast, speaking, the coaching and retreats and events that I do, the meditations that I lead, everything is under what I call myself as an inspirer. You could also call it personal growth professional, but doesn't inspire sound cooler? It does to me. So Jesse Itzler, we're in a similar path in that, right? And I wanted to hear his keynote speech because I had seen snippets of it on Instagram and was like, oh, we have a similar vibe in some ways. I want to study his work. I noticed that he had a speech in Austin, Texas. However, it was a real estate focused event. So it was for real estate professionals, realtors. And it was also over a grand. And I was like, is there anything else he has going on? Went to his website and discovered that he had an event coming up called Running Man. It's his festival that's put on by him and his running apparel company called All Day Running Co. It is in North Georgia, but it was very inconvenient for me to attend. It was right after I got back from this England trip that I had coming up, which I will tell you about. And it was also over a grand. And I'm also like not really a big runner, but as soon as I saw this thing, I just got this intuitive feeling in my gut. It was like a voice that was like, you need to go to that. And I was like, what? It's like $1,200. It's in Georgia. It's right when I get back from England. My mind was saying, this isn't going to work. But my soul was saying, yes, you have to do this. But I didn't book the ticket because I was in this battle of my soul saying yes and my mind saying no. Let me back up a little bit and tell you about the England trip. So, the reason that I needed to leave Marfa was because I had this trip to England planned. The reason I had this trip to England planned is because I am in my master's studying transpersonal psychology. So, in early 2026, I will have a master's of science in transpersonal psychology with a focus in consciousness and spirituality. Essentially, transpersonal psychology is a relatively new field in which we study the whole person. So we go beyond just the psyche. We study the whole person, and that can include the spiritual aspect, the aspect of consciousness. That also includes non ordinary states of consciousness. So, flow, the imagination, mystical experiences. There is a conference that's been going on for 24 years called Eurotas, and I knew that I wanted to attend this conference this year because it was being put on by my school. So every year there's like a different hosting group of this conference. My school is the host for this year. And I knew I wasn't going to go to Burning Man this year. And this conference happened to occur during that week. So I was like, perfect. I don't have to worry about FOMO because I'm not going to go to Burning Man for the first time in 7 years. And instead, I'm going to go to this really cool conference. But if there's one thing that you need to know about me, it is that I have get involved-itis, which is that I can never just like do something. I always have to be on the leadership committee or be a core volunteer. So if you ever invite me to a party and you need someone to speak or to organize something, call me because I will say yes. I don't like just being on the fringes of something. I want to be learning and meeting people and involved in making it happen. So I couldn't just go to this transpersonal psychology conference. I decided that I needed to speak at it. This transpersonal psychology conference, they're hosting it at Oxford University in Oxford, United Kingdom, which was even more cool. Oxford University, just like one of the most prestigious, cool, old universities in the world. I applied to speak and I was super excited. I was like, I hope that I get approved to speak. I applied to speak with my normal keynote, which is the speech that I give at corporations and associations. So one day I received an email and the subject line of the email said rejection. And if you've never received an email and the subject line is just rejection, like you haven't lived. And I don't know if it's a British thing because I feel like if it was in America, the subject line would have been like an update on your application. And then in the body of the email, it would have been like, we regret to inform you. No, the Brits do not mess around. I've been trying to work on my resilience and grit a lot the past couple of years because if there's one thing that 2022 taught me, as you've heard on this podcast, and that deep depression that I was in, was that my resilience and grit were not very strong. One thing I've been trying to work on is not taking rejection personally, not taking failure personally, learning how to just get back up and go and not let failures and obstacles hold me back and like feel it, but don't let it hold me back. Really, when I got that email, it stung and I was disappointed because I really wanted to speak at this conference. I just got overwhelmed with emotion. A tear fell from my eye and it landed on my laptop. And as I looked down at that tear that landed on my laptop, I noticed the time on my computer and the date. I realized that I still had like 2 or 3 hours before the applications closed. As soon as that tear fell, I just felt this reinvigoration of strength. And I was like, you're going to reapply, Kate. You're going to reapply. And this is important because historically, I would have let rejection take me down for days or even weeks. I would have been like, they don't like me. I'm not good enough. Like, ever going to be able to speak a university as prestigious as Oxford. It would have just like totally derailed me. So the fact that I was able to get an email that said rejection, cry a tear, and then in the span of like 15 minutes, feel like I'm going to try again, that was a really big deal for me. And so that's what I did. And I went about it in a different way. I was like, okay, so I got rejected. Well, Kate, why did you get rejected? You got rejected because this is an academic conference at Oxford University and you applied to speak with your motivational keynote. So let's try something different. This is a key aspect of developing grit and resilience is the pivot and objectively looking at what I could have done differently instead of thinking that I'm just a terrible person and nothing I do is correct. So I was like, okay, this is an academic conference at Oxford University. Why don't I come up with an academic speech? So I took some of the research from my first book and a hypothesis that I had already been forming in some of my research. And I applied with an abstract of this new hypothesis with this psychological research in an academic format. And what do you know? A week later, I got the email that said accepted. So I got the opportunity to speak at Oxford University. I've never been to the UK. I am a person who loves culture shock. I love going to countries that have such radically different cultures and just being so out of my element and not knowing the language, not knowing the customs. I just love that feeling of being so humbled and being so out of my comfort zone. Going to Japan was amazing. I would just go into restaurants and hold the menu and be like, "What do you want to serve me? Give me anything." So England wasn't super high on my list because they are a Western country. They speak English. I just didn't perceive their culture to be that much different than America. So I was like, I'll get there when I get there. But now that I had this speaking engagement in England, I was like, well, I can't just go for the speaking engagement. I'm not going to fly across the world to just go to Oxford. If I'm going to go to England, I need to travel around and experience it and give it its shot. So I booked a week of travel in England before my speaking engagement in Oxford to experience the country. So I flew over there and I had 3 days in London first. The first night that I got there, I went to a Dvorak symphony performance. I was sitting next to this jolly British chap, and I'm totally jet lagged, right? I'm so tired. I asked him a question about this performance, and he just starts telling me all of this interesting history about this festival and English culture. And one of the things that he said, "Oh, yes, well, British culture is totally different than American culture." And I was like, yeah, whatever. I had just gotten to England and I was still perceiving England to be so similar to America, and I was like, "Oh, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about." But actually, that totally came true, as I traveled around England, and let me just tell you, I was enchanted by England. I loved it. Oh my gosh, it's like you're just in a storybook the whole time. Like, London, so cool. I don't know that I would ever wanna, like, live there. Maybe I would live there for a year, but I didn't feel like it was a place I wanted to move. But it was just, like, lovely parks and interesting history, and I went to the ballet, and I went to the symphony, and I did a walking tour, and then I rented a car, and here's something that you need to hear. I knew that they drove on the left side of the road, and I was confident. I was like, "Oh, I can rent a car," because I had gone to New Zealand some years ago with my sister, and we rented a camper van. We drove on the left side of the road. I drove the entire time. I had 0 problems. However, when I got to England this is so embarrassing. I got to England and I got to the rental car place and I was shocked and dismayed when I realized that the driver's seat is on the other side. So not only do they drive on the left side of the road, but the driver's seat is on the right side of the car. I remember I got in the car and I gave myself a pep talk. I had my hands on the steering wheel. Okay, Kate, this is real. You're driving on the left side of the road, the right side of the car. Get your head in the game. You can do this. So I set off in the rental car by myself, driving around. And let me just tell you something about English roads. They were not built for 2 cars. They weren't even built for 1 car. English roads were built for like a horse and buggy. And so when you're driving in these countryside roads outside of London, in order to pass, you have to inch over to the side of the road, basically in the brush, to let the car pass you. It was very scary. The roads were very windy. It was gorgeous, but I'm getting tired by driving because I had to be very alert, driving on the left side, skinny roads, right side of the car, paying attention to where I'm going. So finally, I was driving out to the Cotswolds. The Cotswolds. I was just getting to my Airbnb and I had to come down this hill, and they had said that it was a very sharp turn. To get to my Airbnb, you had to take almost a backwards turn, and it was, like, down a very steep hill. So it was very scary. Kept getting scared to make the turn, so I would go down and then go around and then come back, and I would miss it again, and then I would go turn around and then go down. I did this 3 times. And then finally, I was coming around, and as I was coming around this curve, I came head to head with a semi truck. I had been driving on the wrong side of the road for like 20 yards or 30 yards, but I came head to head with a semi. My life flashed before my eyes. The guy's looking at me, I'm looking at him, we're head to head. It was not 3 feet in between the grill of his truck and the front of my car. And I am just freaked out and frozen. Finally, I gather myself up. I think I had to back up a little bit to actually wedge myself out from being head to head with him. And he's like, excuse me, ma'am. What's wrong with you?" And I said, "I'm an American. I'm an American tourist. I am so, so, so sorry." And he goes, "Well, you won't do that again, will you?" That's a terrible British accent, but you get the idea. And so I was just like, done. I did not want to drive anymore. I was super freaked out. I was planning on like road tripping up another 2, 3 hours to this northern city that I had wanted to visit. Canceled that. I was like, "No, this is too dangerous. You will be endangering yourself and all of the people of England." So I rebooked a different Airbnb that was only like 20 or 30 minutes away. That is my near death experience. And honestly, I really felt like that night I was like, "Whoa, today was not your day to die, Kate." Let me just say that driving in England for an American is not for the faint of heart. And next time I go, I will either have a driver or a man driving me around or both. I would much rather be in the back, like, reading a book or looking out the window than driving myself in England because it was terrifying. So I had this great trip all around England. I went walking on the Cotswold Way, just these like amazing forests. I sang in the forest. I hugged trees. I felt enchanted by the stone walls and the pubs and the cupcakes. And also, England, they do elderflower like nobody else. I love elderflower. If you love elderflower, you know what's up. And, they do elderflower soda and elderflower tea and elderflower, and I was just like, I couldn't get enough. I stayed in a tiny house on a pretty she horse farm. The tiny house was positioned so that it faced one of the horse pastures. I mean, these people had acreage, and one of the pastures, the windows and the door of the tiny house opened up, and it was a stone wall in this green rolling pasture. One morning, I awoke, and it was a misty English morning, and I just opened my eyes. I saw mist gently floating on this green pasture and horses, white and tan and brown, galloping through the mist in front of this window. And I could not discern whether it was a dream or reality. I've had moments in my life where I'm like, this feels like a dream, but I've never had a moment where I blinked my eyes and could not discern that it was actual reality because I thought it felt like a dream. So that, my friends, was the most magical Airbnb I have ever stayed in. But finally, it is time to go to the conference and have my speaking engagement. My speech went amazing. It was a full house. They had so many events actually that I was like, oh, I wonder if anybody's going to show up to my events. There's so much competition. I mean, at any one time, there was like 20 to 30 different events going on. But I was really excited because I had a full house for my speech. I was presenting to physicists, psychologists. One of my professors was in the audience, and I just got really positive feedback. So that was actually my first really academic speech, and it went great. And it was at Oxford University, which is just absolutely bananas. On my last night in England, we're going to come back to the Jesse Itzler Running Man thing. I still had not booked my ticket to Running Man. I was just like, oh, I don't know, $1,200. Like, can you do that? Scarcity mode. Don't do it. I've done so much work on scarcity mode and I still fall into it. It's insidious. But they had sent an email that they were going to raise the price. And I was like, I know if this thing is $200 more than it is now, I won't do it. I was at this Indian restaurant my last night in England and I bought that ticket. So my soul won, my intuition won. I was going to fly back to America, have 1 day to reset, and then get in the car and drive to North Georgia from Austin, which I think was like a 15-hour drive to go to a running event when I'm not a runner because my soul told me that I should. I told you I have get involved itis. I have to take things like to the max level. I'm not just going to go to Running Man. I am going to meet Jesse Itzler. So I'm talking with my friend Bridget on the phone on my drive out there. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to meet them. It's going to be so amazing. And she's like, yeah, what are you going to do when you meet them? And I was like, I don't know. Bridget is a real estate agent. Bridget, if you're listening, thank you. So she knows how to surprise and delight her clients. So she's like, you should give them a gift. You could give them something cool from Austin. I had already departed Austin, so I couldn't do that. I'm really good at writing handwritten letters. I love mailing things to people. So is Jesse Itzler. He has said in his Instagram videos many times that handwritten letters are one of the things that have gotten him where he got in his career. It's that personal touch. It's a way of standing out. That's partially where I got the idea. Oh, I'm going to write him a letter. So I wrote a letter to Sarah, a letter to Mike Posner, and a letter to Jesse. I kept them in my backpack. Well, as soon as I got to Running Man, I was chatting with this girl and she was like, "Oh, there's Jesse right there." They had just finished a panel discussion or something and he was standing there talking to people. And so she's like, "I got to go up and meet him." So I was like, "Oh, I'm going to follow. This is my shot." Well, she was just kind of dominated the conversation and I didn't feel like there was space for me to jump in other than I was wearing my You Might Die Tomorrow shirt and Jesse's like, "Oh, cool shirt." And I said, "Thanks." I didn't even tell him that it was mine. The way that the event is set up is in the middle is all the festival stuff, like all the different tents and the booths and the vendors and the stage. And on the outside is a 1 mile track, like in this field. The concept of the event is how far can you run when you're surrounded by really cool, uplifting people, when you set a goal for yourself, and when the track is exactly 1 mile. So you know how many laps equals, let's say, a 5K or a 10K or a marathon, right? You're not just running from point A to point B. Like you can push yourself to go further. When I got back from England, I had a really bad cold. And so as I'm driving to Running Man, I was like, you know what? I'm going to try to just run up my 5K without stopping. I haven't run a 5K in a long time. I haven't run, period, in a long time. So I set my goal kind of low. The morning of the race, Saturday, I did it. I achieved my goal. I ran the 5K without stopping. It was cool. And then I ended up getting a migraine, which was a bummer. I had to go to my car and take my medicine and rest. As the day went on, I never came across one person who had a negative thing to say. The people that surround Jesse and that are attracted to his work are just like so driven, so positive, so can-do attitude. Like, people were just saying, "Oh, what a great track," even though it had a hill and was super uneven. "Oh, like, I wonder if it's gonna rain, like, it could totally just start pouring at any moment," but super positive about the whole thing. It was just such a high vibration of positivity and can-do attitude that really inspired me. And so as the day went on, yeah, I got a migraine and I was sick. I just felt like I didn't push myself as far as I could have. But I had an amazing day. It was super fun. I met a lot of really cool people. Mike Posner gave this incredible performance. That night, after Mike Posner's, they had this epic cover band that they had flown in from New York. We were under this tent. Everyone's dancing, singing, screaming, just having a blast. And so was I. But then at some moment, I got an attack of the SADS. If this happens to you, you know how it feels, which is where you're in a crowd and everyone's having a great time. And suddenly you just feel this like impending sense of loneliness. So I stepped away from the crowd for a moment and I looked out into the night and there was a few lights on the track and I was like, I need to run this feeling off. I was actually wearing my Air Force Ones. I was not wearing running shoes at this point, but I ran out and I just started running and I told myself, Kate, you need to run until this sad, lonely, just melancholy gets dissolved away. So I ran 1 lap, that's 1 mile, then I ran the second lap, and the first 2 laps was just, like, me battling the negative thoughts about, like, "You came here alone, like, you haven't met enough people, you didn't get to meet Jesse or Sarah or Mike, everyone else is having fun and, like, in a group, and you're just not with them." That was the first 2 laps, and then by the 3rd lap, I was feeling a sense of peace where I didn't have that negative voice in my mind. I kept going. By the 4th lap, that sense of peace gave way to positive thoughts where I was like, you know what? This is fun. You're meant to be here. Anything is possible. And I kept running. I think I did, I don't know, 5, 6 miles in my Air Force Ones alone in the night, in the dark, stepping over holes because I could barely see. Everybody else is inside under the tent partying and drinking and having a good time. And I'm out there just running by myself. Soon I ran until it was just me and the moon and God. And I'm getting emotional because the negative feelings went away. And then it was replaced by that peace. And then it was replaced by positive thoughts. And I just ran until I cleaned myself out. And when I stepped off that track, it was almost midnight. And as soon as I stepped off the track, fireworks went up, you guys. Oh my God, I'm just like, I'm laughing through tears. Laughter through tears is my favorite emotion. That's a quote from Steel Magnolias. I'm I'm sorry, I'm like going over this memory with you guys. But when I stepped off the track, fireworks went off because I guess they had fireworks planned. And it was just this beautiful moment of like, again, we talk about resilience, like, I have had so many periods in my life where I got stuck in the dumps, where I got stuck in failure, where I got stuck in my obstacle. Now I've gotten to experience and demonstrate 2 times just in this story where I was able to have some type of, like, negative feeling or rejection or failure, and then in a short period of time of minutes or hours to feel that rejection, to feel that negative feeling, and then transmute it into something else, transmute it into something more useful, transmute it into something more positive, transmute it into standing up and moving forward. The really cool things that I'm proud of are getting up after failure, demonstrating grit, demonstrating resilience. That's not even the point of the story because the next day is the last day of Running Man. It's Sunday. I hadn't met Jesse yet, even though that was my intention, but they're closing down the festival. And I'm up at my car, getting everything packed up and organized. They're starting to break down tents. Jesse says, I didn't come this far to come this far, which is like if you want something and you've gone a little bit down the path to try to get it, but then you turn back, like, I didn't come this far to come this far. So I'm standing up in my car and I'm like, I was literally about to leave. And I was like, no, I didn't come this far to come this far. I came here to meet Jesse. I just felt like I needed to for whatever reason. And I had the letter in my backpack still. I walked back down to the festival as they're closing up the tents and taking shit down. And I saw his assistant walk into the merch tent. So I was like, oh, I'll just follow her. At minimum, I wanted to find out when his speech was in Austin because I had this fantasy. A side thing about me is I love sneaking into places. I literally once bought like a construction vest because I wanted to go in the backstage area of a surf competition in Australia. I love going into places that I'm not supposed to be. I had this idea that I didn't want to pay $1,000 to go to this real estate conference to see Jesse's official keynote, but that I was going to find out when his speech was so I could dress up as security for the hotel and just watch the keynote. So here I am. I walk into the merch tent as they're shutting down the event. I follow the assistant in and I see Jesse. And it's just me, Jesse's assistant, the person selling merch, and that's it. And Jesse. And I was like, oh my God, this is my moment. And I knew I had the letter in my backpack, heart's beating. And I'm like, okay, this is it. This is the moment. So I go over, I pull the letter, I pull the card out of my backpack. It was a thank you note. It was a thank you note for having such an amazing event and for creating that good in the world. I'm holding it and I go up to him and I was like, hey, Jesse, I just want to thank you for putting on an amazing event. It totally exceeded my expectations. And I said, hey, I wrote you this thank you card just to show my appreciation. And you just have to imagine, he's had hundreds of people around him all weekend talking to him, asking him things. But when I handed him that card, I saw like a flash in his eyes that he knew that I had done something different than other people. And he turned to face me like he was open to engaging. I thanked him again for the event. And I said, I'm not even a runner. I didn't even come to Running Man for the running. I came to see your keynote on Friday and you killed it. You did an amazing job. Thank you so much. He was like, "Oh, really? You're not even a runner?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm a speaker. I came to study under you for speaking." And I said, "Actually, you are speaking in Austin this week, and I'm gonna see if there's some way that I can kinda, like, sneak into that event because I wanna see your official keynote in a corporate setting too." And he said, "Oh, I'm speaking in Austin?" Which I thought was hilarious because I think when you get to that level of, like, success, you have multiple assistants and things, and you sort of, like, get shepherded where you need to go. So he didn't even fully know that he was speaking in Austin. Also, he's coming off of a crazy weekend. And I said, "Yeah, you're speaking in Austin." And he's like, "Oh, well, you wanna see the speech? Does it cost to attend?" And I said, "Well, yeah, it's a real estate conference. I think it costs like $1,000." He's like, "No, no. You come be a guest of mine." I'm getting emotional again. "You come be a guest of mine." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, that would be amazing." He's like, "No, no. Here's my assistant's name. Then also you should DM me and we'll get you on the list so that you can just come watch my speech for free." And I was, like, inside totally freaking out, like, "This is amazing. I can't believe it. This is totally coming full circle." So I thanked him profusely, let him go on his way. In my haste and in my freak out, I didn't close the deal. I didn't get the assistant's email address. I was like, "Oh, I'll figure it out. I'll handle it." Because I didn't wanna, like, stress him out with too much details because I could tell he was exhausted. So I'm on cloud 9 at this point, driving back to Austin, but I DM'd him and he didn't reply because I've never DM'd him before. It went to like Instagram message jail. So I'm like, "Oh shit, I need to get his assistant's information." So I contacted 2 of my friends that I know are super connected and like really can get shit done. And I was like, "You got to help me get this assistant's information." My friend Jared, thank you, Jared. He went on the assistant's LinkedIn and discovered that they have a friend in common, reached out to that person, got the assistant's information so I could email her and say, "Hey, Jesse asked that I reach out so that I could get on this list." She didn't email me back right away. So I took matters into my own hands and it was a 2-day conference, but they didn't publicize the actual agenda. So I didn't know when his speech was during this 2-day period between Thursday and Friday. This is after I've driven all the way back from Georgia. And now I'm like trying to get into this event. I went down there and I dressed up sort of like, a real estate agent might. And I went to the conference and I just happened to ask one of the organizers. I was like, "Oh, so do you know what the hashtag for this event is?" And they were like, "No, let me find out." And I said, "Oh, also, do you know when Jesse's speech is?" And she's like, "Oh, yeah, it's, tomorrow at such and such time." And I was like, boom, got the information. So it was the next day, went back home, came back the next day. I get to the hotel and his speech was in like 30 minutes. And I was like, "Yeah, I got to go back to the green room. I need to find him and just wish him good luck and then like go and find my seat and do my thing." As I was coming down the hallway, he had come out of the green room and he turned and he looked at me. He recognized me and he put his arms out and brought me in for an enormous hug and was like, "Thank you so much for coming. I'm so stoked you're here." Like, this is why I look up to this guy. He remembers people, he's grounded, and he made this happen. Oh, I forgot to mention the detail that as I'm driving down that day, I got the assistant's email that was like, "Hey, you're on the list. You're good to go." I saw his speech. I was able to take amazing notes. I'm super inspired. I think back to this story. I had just seen this event, got this intuitive sense that I was supposed to go, and I didn't know why, even though it was kind of improbable for me at that time. And then look at everything that happened. I realized that there's like 3 stages or 3 key steps for manifestation. And I will put manifestation in the category of mindset because whether you believe in like the woo woo thoughts become things, or whether you just look at this like idea of manifestation as a mindset practice. I believe both because I'm always passionate about the idea that our spirituality works in tandem with our neurology, especially our neuroplasticity. So, regardless of what you believe relating to this concept of manifestation, whether you believe that it's a psychological mindset thing or a spiritually woo woo thing or both, like I do, typically there are 2 main aspects of manifestation that are often talked about. The first one is to set your desires. Say what you want. I want to be a high paid, extensively booked speaker, for example, or I want to have a book on the New York Times bestseller list, or I want to have an art ranch, right? These are all some of my desires and dreams. But, we speak these and we visualize it, right? Another part of manifestation is that we have to be radically grateful for what we have right now before the timeline that we get to experience when we have all of our dreams and desires. So it's about while don't have a book on the New York Times bestseller list, be radically grateful for all of the book sales that I do have and have had. I really want to have 2 speaking engagements a month at a certain dollar amount. I don't have those yet, but be radically grateful for every single speaking engagement and opportunity that I do have. So it's like just training your brain to look for what is going well. So that's phase 1, set your desires. Phase 2 is be radically grateful for what you see and train your brain to see what is going well. But then in this experience with Jesse and that whole thing, I really feel like there's a third phase of manifestation, and that is radical inspired action. So I can set my desire and say that I want to be a speaker and that I want to meet Jesse. I can be radically grateful for attending Running Man and even having just gotten a picture with him on the first day and just having that very brief interpersonal connection. But then taking the action to go out and try to meet him that last day, and then going to the event in Austin even before I had, like, a formal invitation from his assistant, to having the cojones to go back and wish him good luck when he was in the green room before the speech. Like, these are these brave actions that are the inspired action to back up our dreams and to back up being wildly grateful for what we have. So, if you are wondering what you might add to your manifestation practice, it's courage. So, the last thing, I'm not going to go into a big story about it, but I had booked this really cool speaking engagement in Kansas City. I hadn't given my speech in a couple of months. As soon as I got back from the Jesse speaking engagement in Austin, I had 1 week. I literally wrote on a piece of paper, speech is life, and taped it to my counter so that I could remember. For 1 entire week, I just was deep in my speech. I rehearsed every day, multiple times a day. This is a 75-minute speech. Then I flew to Kansas City and did one thing on my path of dreams, which is giving the speech, which I've given many times, but every time I give it, I love it. And I'm that manifestation practice. I'm so wildly grateful for that opportunity. To review, the whole month, I was just, like, on this crazy roller coaster of, "Oh my god, I can't believe this is happening, and this is happening." There was no stopping. I was full on for almost 2 months between preparing for the Oxford speech, going to England, doing the Oxford speech, going to Running Man, doing the Austin speech with Jesse, and then having my own speaking engagement in Kansas City. I mean, there was no breaks. There was no resting. I was like, "Just keep going. Just focus. Just go." It was just such a gift to be able to experience that. Thank you to everyone who helped me out on that journey, especially Bridget and Jared and my family and Jesse and everybody that I met along the way. This is just the beginning. We're going to get crazier because if there's one thing that that month taught me, it is to just be more delusional, be more bold, call people, try to meet people, write cold emails, write the book, open the store, apply for the speaking engagement. Just do it. And when you don't get it, get back up and try again. And if you do get it, hold on and buckle up because shit is crazy. That is my update on my wild and wonderful last couple of months. I hope you got something out of it. And we ain't done. We're just getting started, my friends. Catch you on the flip side.